Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about a classic author of weird fiction, one of the most important authors of weird fiction. This fella I'm going to be talking about today was a sailor, he was a photographer, he was a bodybuilder, and finally, he was a soldier, and it was as a soldier that he passed away during the First World War. As so many people were, he was killed during the First World War. But the thing he is remembered for is his weird fiction. He was an incredible writer with a tremendous imagination. William Hope Hodgson is a pretty important writer when it comes to fantasy and horror. Seldom read today, though. You will hear people on BookTube once in a while talking about Hodgson because BookTube is a special place. But among readers in general, I don't think Hodgson is read all that often. And he should be because he's fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about this set of books. This is the collected fiction, this pile of books, it's the collected fiction of William Hope Hodgson. This was published by Nightshade Books beginning in 2003, and it was published through 2008. I think the last volume came out in 2008. And it's a spectacular series of books. I have the first edition hardcovers. I was picking these up as they came out. And I was pretty excited when I saw this first volume, which is The Boats of the Glen Carrig and Other Nautical Adventures. I found this in 2003. It was at Dark Carnival in Berkeley, science fiction and mystery bookstore. And I had heard of William Hope Hodgson before. I had heard of William Hope Hodgson, and I had read a couple of his stories. The first time I heard about him was through H.P. Lovecraft's essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature. And I really wanted to read some Hodgson. But back in the olden days, after I had first heard of this guy, it was almost impossible to find his books. A couple of his books were published in paperback in the 1970s. There were a few books published. They were just hard to find. And I was very thrilled when I saw this. It was volume 1, so I knew there were more coming. And I picked them up as they came out. This one cost me $35, and it's a beautiful book. I mean, look at that glorious cover, and there's William Hope Hodgson himself on the back. Such an imagination, this guy. And he went to sea at a very young age. He ran away from home and eventually became a sailor. And his experiences as a sailor were quite useful to him when he became a writer. And he initially became popular because of his weird sea stories. And if you read his work, you can see why H.P. Lovecraft liked it so much. This is a writer who was championed by Lovecraft and also by Clark Ashton Smith. And this writer was probably pretty influential, I would think, on Clark Ashton Smith. And it's just really interesting stuff. Hodgson has been criticized by Lovecraft and some others because of the archaic style, the archaic language he used in some of his stories. Not all of them, but some of them. He has faced some criticism because of that, although that archaic style doesn't bother me so much. But just the imagination that this guy had was tremendous. And so I thought we would take a closer look at this set of books because it's an incredible set of books published by Nightshade Books. And even though these hardcovers are pretty scarce nowadays, all of these books are available in paperback at at a pretty reasonable price too. So if you're interested in Hodgson, this is the best way to read Hodgson, I think. This set of books, because it's everything. Of course, if you just want to read Hodgson to see if if he's an author you want to read more of, all of his work, well, that's not true. Most of his work, most of his famous work anyway, is available in the public domain. And you can get it on Project Gutenberg, and you could read Hodgson that way. And then if you want to read everything that he wrote, yeah, get these books, because these books are fantastic. So let's take a look at these books and the contents of the books. So this is the very first book, The Boats of the Glencarrick and Other Nautical Adventures. And this hardcover is really nice. I mean, it's over 20 years old and it's still just beautiful. The paper is of good quality. It hasn't yellowed at all. And let's see what's in this volume. So we've got the Sargasso Sea Stories. We've also got that nice picture of Hodgson, handsome fellow. So in this volume, we've got the Boats of the Glencarrick, and then we've got some short stories, the Sargasso Sea Stories. Then we have the exploits of Captain Galt, a popular character of Hodgson's, Captain Galt. So we've got the exploits of Captain Galt. Then we've got the adventures of Captain Jat. And then we've got DCO Kargunka. Is it Kargunka or Kargunka? Neither Roger nor I know how to pronounce Kargunka's name, but there he is. And then we've got a note on the text. We've got the editor's introduction. Who did edit this volume? Jeremy Lassen. And he wrote the introduction way back in February of 2003. So this has a lot of the stories that made Hodgson popular at the time that he was writing. And so really interesting stuff. And like I said, because of his experiences as a sailor, he used those experiences to give these stories some authenticity, you know. But he also had an incredibly weird imagination, Hodgson did. And so he puts a lot of really weird stuff into his stories. And so you have just straight nautical adventures, and then you have some really, really bizarre stuff. And a great opening volume here, The Boats of the Glencarrick and Other Nautical Adventures. And then we get to volume 2, which could be my favorite volume of the set, because it has a spectacularly weird novel, The House on the Borderland. So this is The House on the Borderland and Other Mysterious Places. And The House on the Borderland is a hard novel to describe. It's almost impossible to describe the actual story. It has the feeling of a very odd nightmare, but a very real one. When you're reading this novel, it goes into some strange places. I mean, you've got monsters, it becomes kind of a siege story, and then it becomes like just really cosmic horror story. It has some weird stuff in The House of the Borderland, which has made it one of Hodgson's most popular books. And it certainly is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite weird novels of all time, actually. And so if you haven't read it and you're interested in weird fiction, The House on the Borderland is probably a must-read, I would think. And this book 2 of this collection, has it, along with some other things. So we have another editor's introduction, and one of the most popular characters that William Hope Hodgson ever came up with, which is Carnacki the Ghost Finder. So this volume 2, has the Carnacki stories. And Carnacki is an occult detective, an early occult detective. And he has proven to be tremendously popular. There have been other writers who have written Carnacki pastiche stories. But these are the original Carnacki stories in volume 2. So not only does this book have The House on the Borderland, the opening novel. But then we have Carnacki, the Ghost Finder, and then we have other tales of mystery and suspense. So this book, Volume 2, is just great. I mean, if you were to read only one of this set of books, it probably should be this one because it has some of his best stuff in here. House on the Borderland and Carnacki, the Ghost Finder. I recommend both of those books very much. And we also have these other tales of mystery and suspense with stories like Terror of the Water Tank, which is a story I have seen anthologized quite a bit, and many others, The Goddess of Death. So volume 2 is fantastic, an excellent volume. And then we get to volume 3, which is The Ghost Pirates. This is The Ghost Pirates and Other Revenants of the Sea. So more sea stories. The Ghost Pirates is actually a really good novel. It's one of his shortest novels. I think it is his shortest novel, actually. And so this volume 3, has that. Let me see if I could find the table of contents in here. It's in here somewhere. Here it is. So we have the opening novel, The Ghost Pirates. Then we have The Silent Ship. And then we have Stories of the Sea. So we have just a bunch of sea stories. Again, Hodgson's experience as a sailor gives these stories a lot of authenticity. Then we have Revenants, or posthumously published stories of the sea. So we got some posthumously published stories not published during his all too brief lifetime. That was volume 3. And then volume 4 is one of his greatest works, which is The Nightland. So this is The Nightland and Other Perilous Romances. So this is volume 4. And The Nightland is another book which is kind of hard to describe. It is one of his stories that has been criticized because of its archaic language, but it's just so tremendously imaginative and has proven to be so influential. A very strange story, The Nightland, which I don't even want to talk about it because you've got to read it. It's sort of his epic. It's the longest thing I think that he wrote, and it's really impressive. The Nightland. So, and the introduction says a masterpiece of sorts, which I think does adequately describe it. And as the introduction states in the first paragraph, The Nightland is William Hope Hodgson's towering achievement, awe-inspiringly massive, convoluted, and purposefully archaic. It is his most ambitious and influential work, a tour de force. Numerous writers have taken up the gauntlet thrown down by Hodgson and engaged in similar thematic endeavors, many of which far surpass Hodgson's flawed masterpiece. I really like The Nightland. It is strange. It is flawed. The archaic language can be a little much, but it's also really, really interesting. I mean, if you're interested, of course, in the history of weird fiction, The Nightland is a must. And here it is in volume 4, along with some other things. So we've got The Nightland, but we also have Perilous Romances. And you see that it has far fewer contents in this volume, just because The Nightland is so darn big. The Nightland pretty much takes up the whole volume here. And then we've got a few perilous romances. The Captain of the Onion Boat, The Smugglers, The Girl with the Gray Eyes, some other things. So yeah, The Nightland is great. And then we have the final volume, which is interesting. So this is The Dream of X and Other Fantastic Visions. I remember, if I'm remembering right, there was a pretty big gap between this and this. I feel like I was waiting on this volume for a long, long time. Finally, it came out in 2008. And it was worth the wait. because there's a bunch of interesting stuff in here, including a lot of really good short stories. And so this volume has fantastic visions. So you get a bunch of short stories in this volume. And then you have some interesting things. We have copyright versions. And what that is they were versions of the Nightland and I think the Ghost Finders, was it? Yeah, the Ghost Pirates. So copyright versions of the Ghost Pirates and Carnacki the Ghost Finder and the Dream of X, which is the Nightland. And he wrote these cut up versions of his stories, or he edited these just so that he can get an American copyright. And he never really intended them on being published. So severely abridged versions of these. And probably the one that works the best is The Dream of X, which is the Nightland, just a severely abridged version. And it was published once as a limited edition hardcover, I think. Otherwise, none of these have seen the light of day, I don't think. And then we have after those, and those are pretty strange, we have alternate versions of some certain stories and a couple counterfeits. And so this volume, which closes out this series, is really interesting. And certainly, if you are a William Hope Hodgson completist, and why wouldn't you be after reading all the other stuff that he wrote, this is a must-have. And again, this is available in paperback, just like all of these other volumes are, which is wonderful. There was a brief time where these were very hard to get, but now they're in paperback, like I said, which is great. You can get them all. I highly recommend them. I highly recommend this author. Just brilliant stuff. So there you go. William Hope Hodgson, the collected fiction of William Hope Hodgson from Nightshade Books. It's glorious. We'll catch you next time.